All right, bye weeks are great and all, but it's great to be back into a game week. I think we utilized the bye week well. Had some really good work on the field, first and foremost. Had a chance to get out recruiting a little bit Thursday and Friday, and then, I think for a team that started way back July 25th, for our guys to get Saturday and Sunday off, I think was beneficial for them as well. But excited about how we came back out this morning and practiced, and excited for the opportunity to be back home again, playing a unfamiliar opponent. Obviously, this game was one that was scheduled late. It was almost June, I think, when this game actually got scheduled. So, we've had a chance to begin our preparation on Mercyhurst, and look forward to the opportunity to play in front of our fans again. Starting out, going on the road a couple of times, being at home last opportunity for Gold Rush, and now another opportunity will be great for our players once again. And we need a lot of guys to continue to progress. And I say that's starters, that's backups, that's special teams guys. This team is continuing to formulate. And I thought last week was a good step towards that, and excited about guys getting an opportunity to get out there again and show what they can do on the game field. So that'll open up for questions.
Some of the depth chart changes. So Burke and JT, and it looks like Trimble and Casey are all back. Casey Cosman.
Yeah. Anticipated. First off, those two guards will be back. It's the first time in a while for JT. JT hurt his hand almost at the beginning of fall camp, so he's out there. It was a little bit last week, and I think still figuring out limitations with him wearing a cast. And then I think Burke is full go. Trimble has not been healthy in quite some time, even going back into the summer. So to get him back and add to that depth in the receiver room will be exciting. So, and then Casey is healthy as well.
And with the move in, so Connor back to left tackle, I guess that just best five was kind of the lineup they have out there right now.
Yeah, I think getting Connor back to tackle was always the plan once we could do it. The health of Burke and or JT was part of that. Have appreciated what Cedric Jefferson's been able to do in the interim. I think he's played well, and is a guy that I think will continue to be in the conversation. But getting Connor back home, I guess, is what we want to do. And we'll see down the road. We'll get Justice Perkins back at some point. Will that allow us to move St. Marcus back out to right tackle? Hard telling, but yeah, best five doesn't mean we're just going to play five. I think we're in a mode where we have the potential to play 6 or 7 for the first time all season so far.
And then just with the kicker, Miles still number one for the timing.
Yeah. Miles has done a solid job, and that's the way this thing works. Sometimes he's made the best of the opportunity. It's good to have Casey back and have him competing for the first time in several weeks. We'll start the game out with Miles.
We spoke with Junior earlier, and he talks about you, along with plenty of other coaches, that helped him through the process last year of him mentally staying involved with the program. And he said he might not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So can you kind of expand on what you did and what you saw some of the other coaches do for him?
Yeah, I think when we got Junior to come here, I guess I'd say we signed him, but it wasn't really a signing as his third school. I think it was with hope that he would get a waiver, and I think through the course of last year, the process for getting waivers from the NCAA changed dramatically. So I think as we started off the fall last year, I think we were still hopeful, but I think preparing for the reality of him not being able to play. So it wasn't just like all of a sudden, bam, it hit us between the eyes. I think we were preparing him for that possibility, worst case scenario. And I think when it was final, I think any situation that you don't want to have happen, I think you got to sit a young guy down and say, hey, for whatever reason this has happened, okay? But I hope through the midst of, by then it would have been 8 months or so he would have been here. I hope at a minimum you found your home. And I think once you start talking in those terms, you still have time left on the other side. For whatever reason you've been you've been sent down this path, but you're where you're supposed to be. You have people that care for you, want to make you better, want to give you the tools to become what you want to become. We can keep moving forward. So, in some ways it was keeping his head above water, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever phrase you want to throw out there. And then in the midst of the off season, then he was granted that year back. So I know now, getting that year back was a sense of relief, because I think that's where you're as a competitor. For him, losing that year of being able to compete was a real challenge, and just wondering, is this ever going to work out? So I think we're clearly on the other side of that. He's been able to make an impact through the first 3 games, and we look forward to more of that. But I think he definitely has his feet on the ground way different than he did last year.
Just injury-wise, I was wondering if you had any update on John, and then maybe even Julius if you're.
Yeah, so John Johnson will definitely miss this week again. I think we'll have a better sense through this week what that'll mean for next week. To be completely honest, I think I'd say he's week to week now. And then for Drew and Julius, I think we're maybe a week away from them being able to do some practice activities. Ultimately, what that'll mean over the next month, I guess. I think both of those guys will need a ramp up. You go from maybe a week of being able to do individual drills to then taking that a little bit further in the next week, and to be able to be in playing shape, that's going to be a couple weeks from there. So I think it's getting closer. I've always felt like going back to May when they both were injured, that it would take 5 months ish to be able to know exactly where we're at, and we're about to that point.
Sure. Then I guess looking at Mercyhurst, what do you know about their offense, their quarterback situation, kind of all that?
Yeah, again, a team that we hadn't anticipated playing until the time came. I know we have them on next year's schedule. Moving up to Division I this year, playing in the NEC. I think obviously they're moving in a direction they want to move as a program. I know, so far they're 1-2. That second game against Howard, that was a game they probably should have won. I think this past week, Robert Morris is one of the better teams in that league. So offensively, though, I think in each one of these games they've been able to do some things. Quarterback is a dual threat guy, not the biggest guy, but I think he's got a knack for being able to make some things happen, to be able to improvise. I do think they have some decent skill, for sure. Some good size skill. A good running back. I think are good stable running backs that certainly can run with power. So I think for us, now that we have 3 games to be able to look at opponent for the first time, very helpful. I think they've certainly settled in on who they want to be. They're certainly a team that wants to be balanced. They're not a run or pass heavy, I would say. I know they ended up chasing points a little bit more, against Robert Morris than they probably had hoped. So they threw it probably a little bit more this last game, but they've been able to have some really good flashes in these first 3 games, and we're going to have to be where we need to be and tackle well the things that we've done. But I think they're definitely going to test us in those regards.
Anything, I guess, similar question, anything that stands out defensively?
Yeah, multiple. I think I would say fairly aggressive. And just even looking at Saturday's game against Robert Morris, threw a lot of things at Robert Morris, and Robert Morris was able to make some plays on the flip side of some of that. Both in the run and the pass game. So, it's one of those opponents where you got to be ready for quite a bit up front. And even coverage-wise, I think fairly aggressive on the coverage end. So I think a good test again to say, okay, hey, we're not going to know exactly how they're going to line up. I mean, not because we haven't seen them, because they are very multiple, both in their philosophies, I think, as far as their pressure and then also their coverages.
Playing this game and having a bye last week as opposed to the original plan of SFA last week and a bye this week, how do you would you prefer the other? Do you prefer this? Is there any?
Well, I'd say it's the way it worked out, so we're going to prefer this way. I do think, given the way a few of our injuries played out, probably in particular for the three offensive guys, Burke, JT, and Jacob, this probably worked out better for them. Not that we couldn't have forced them into action last week, but having an extra week under their belt to prepare, I think will serve them better. So, and honestly, where we started on the calendar, I think we were able to utilize last week as well as we would have used this week. Opponent-wise, you're gonna play who they put on your schedule, I guess. So it was an idea. I know a lot of people had to change their plans. I know we have some parents that have trips that they won't be able to see their kids play because they had trips planned for this week. So less than ideal. And I think ultimately what happened back in May should not happen. I think we all feel very strongly about that. But thankfully, we were able to get a game. I think that's probably the underlying that credit Leon and being able to quickly find a game, and I'd say quickly, that was that last week in May, beginning of June when this all came about. So excited we have this game and excited for the opportunity.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, Coach. When it comes to playing a team like Mercyhurst, who's pretty much brand new to Division I, how do you sort of get your guys on high alert, even though they're going to hear that all week long?
Well, I hope we have a team that's mature enough to not care who they play, I guess, as far as that goes. We're not going to let our perception of anything dictate our performance. We've talked about that. Secondly, I think how we played in the second half against Maine, I hope that in itself, indicated that we are far from where we need to be. And I know that was a lot of backups in that case, but ultimately we're going to be relying on a lot of those guys to play. And it wasn't just backups, in that scenario. So, and you only get so many of these opportunities, period, and you always want to be able to put your best foot forward, whether that's opportunities to play here at home, opportunities to play this game in general. So, respect for what your opponent can do, respect for, hey, just because they did this one Saturday, that doesn't mean they can't turn it on. I mean, I'm sitting around watching college football on Saturday. I mean, it's full of that, and we usually don't get that luxury of sitting around and watching college football, but rarely does the same team show up, and you never know what another team's underlying motivation is, what they're overcoming, etc. So we have to be concerned about what do we need to do to put our best foot forward, and again, thankful we have this opportunity in front of us to get better, and that's really what it has to be about.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you watched college football last week, because there was so many sort of unlikely and unpredictable results. So that's kind of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, end to end, I did on Saturday. So yeah, it's every week that way. That's why in some ways it is the greatest sport there is, because there is so much unpredictability, and you're dealing with 18 to 22, 23-year-olds, and that in itself creates unpredictability. So I certainly don't need to be reminded of that we need to prepare, we need to be on our guys, we need to be about what do we have to do this week to get better. And consistency is hard in this game. Getting constant improvement is really hard, and you need the right mindset really out there on that practice field every day. And that's what we talked about first and foremost last week, and that continued this morning. So I think we've continued to put in the work. We have a bunch of work left, but we have been far from consistent to this point, 3 games in, and if we can take a step in that direction, Saturday will be a great opportunity for that.
I heard a coach say earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I can't remember who, but somebody was talking about big picture versus small picture, and how it's so much easier to be consistent if you have your team focused on the small picture. How
Well, I think you try to make it about the present, and we make a lot of references to that. Living in the moment, being where your feet are, and like for this week, we got to be about today. What do we do today to make ourselves better? And if you become a team that is looking to the next opponent down the road, you're trying to figure out where are we at right now relative to where we're going to be in November. And then that makes any impact on what you can do this week. The fact that we're 3-0 has nothing to do with our ability to go 1-0 this week. So I think you just constantly have those types of messages and hope that it resonates with your guys, that okay, they can live day to day. And really going back, that's been our central theme going back to January with this team is, we had a disappointing year last year. We all want to fix it in a New York minute, which fixing it, whatever that even means. You have to be in a day-to-day mode. You have to do whatever you can to win that day. It doesn't mean you're going to win every day, but you got to figure out how to win the next day. And that's so messaging, I suppose, is a big part of it, but actions aren't the bigger part. And if you feel like a team is diverting from those messages with their actions, you better figure it out in a hurry. So fortunately, I think we got a pretty mature team that gets that, but we're still a work in progress.
I'm sure a ton of people asked you last week, maybe in the off week, about all the stuff that went down in the Pac-12, the Mountain West, and all this. Do you have to sort of ignore that when you are concentrating on the here and now? Do you have any thoughts on just the way that it's kind of all starting to evolve?
Yeah, I know that was certainly let's say the next domino, right? Whatever was going to be the move for Washington State and Oregon State. So that move's been made, far from a complete move. We don't control much of anything. So, you make it about the things you can control. So it doesn't have anything to do with the 2014. But I think as you recruit and what the landscape of what a high school seniors 4 years are going to look like, I think, you get asked questions that are about things you can't control. So I think continue to monitor it. I know that I feel strongly that our administration is going to have the most aggressive approach possible, whatever that means, right? I think, again, we only control so much. So, there's so many things that beyond just that move last week that have yet to happen and will continue to happen on the national landscape that just do the best we can, keep pushing our program forward, our university program forward, and that's what we need to be about right now.
Back to the here and now, when it comes to the offensive line, I know you talked a lot about getting the best 5 and having the best 8 or 9 available and all these different things, but when it comes to the specific ability for Cole Sane to slide over at center, and he has been as he's been, what's gone into that, and what have you thought of just how consistent he's been?
Yeah, it was really calling back on some past history, or I should say past history experience. Cole was a center. He was the center before Justice. Hadn't played out for too many game reps, but when Cole's been healthy, 21 and even through 22, he was right there as far as playing that position. So without last fall, without spring ball, to be thrust into that position, I think the big thing for him being able to do it beyond the previous experience was there's a real maturity about Cole right now that he's in his 7th year. He's been through a lot. He chose to take this 7th year, has his master's behind him, all this stuff. So with that maturity, I know that doing all the things necessary once that moment with Justice going down happened, he was going to do, he's done. So it's a combination of okay, I've played this position before, but more so I'm going to do everything I can because this is what the team needs. This is what this opportunity in front of me, how it's presented itself. And you look down a list of guys that have played better each week, he's at the top of the list. I mean, the rust that he had on, his game was significant, and he did some really good things, but missed some things the first week, and I think that carried through the second week. He had a holding penalty and gave up a sack. Well, he took his game to another level last week, and that's the expectation for him again this week.
When it comes to Brent Vigen, I know you were really pleased with his progress during the offseason. It kind of got delayed here these last couple of weeks, but what has gone into that growth, and where has he grown the most to sort of get to this spot that
Yeah, I think first off, he's done a great job in the weight room with Coach Herron. He's developed significantly from his senior year at Red Lodge. I think with that development, his confidence has grown significantly. I know, I feel strongly that between his junior and senior year, whether you just said, Burke, can you play at Montana State? I think he would have probably questioned it. He came here and had a good camp that summer, and I think we told him, you can play here. And he was like, oh, okay. You know, and then he had a really good senior year, but I think confidence and strength and you know, reps, I think all that just allows a young man like him to get to the point where, okay, I feel like I can do this. Now, he hasn't done it in a game. He did a little bit last year, a few reps here and there, but, you know, that's still in front of him. But you know, really talented, but more so just he's worked really hard to develop. And he's worked, you know, really hard, let's say in the classroom to really learn what all goes into that position. And he's just kind of the next guy in line that you say, okay, as a redshirt boy, seems like he's a ways away. As a redshirt freshman, closing the gap. And now as a redshirt sophomore, ready to go. I think we have a couple other guys in this year's redshirt freshman crew that are on that same trajectory. So excited for Burke. I know it's killed him these first 3 weeks not to be able to play first 3 games, but I think he's really excited about the opportunity.
On the defensive side, you guys played so well defensively, especially that second half against New Mexico, and then basically the entire game against Utah Tech, and then really well the first 2 quarters against Maine too, when all those first team guys were in. What have been the keys to just how?
Well, yeah, I think we've put together 7 really good quarters, and I even look back at the first 2 quarters against New Mexico. That was a pretty good offense, and we were figuring out that day. And there were some things that through that second quarter I think we improved upon. So, what have we done well? I think we've played really good team assignment defense. I know in this last game we had a lot of guys getting to the football. We had very few solo tackles. So we have guys where they're supposed to be, or getting where they're supposed to be at Mach 1. We are flying around on that side of the ball, and you know, we haven't had, you know, from a run perspective, we haven't had the misfits, the missed tackles that can really hurt you and pile up and create big explosive plays. Now, we did have some coverage issues in this last game that we got to shore up, but by and large, our guys have been really dialed in on the game plan for one, but then also, hey, here's where I'm supposed to be. I'm not going to try to do too much. If I'm a guy that has to play in this gap so the next guy can make the play, I'm going to do that. If I'm a guy that has to keep leverage so another guy can make the play, I'm going to do that. And I think there's an unselfish nature about this defense right now that is what you need to see to play really good team defense. That's the mark of the level we're trying to attain.
Sometimes you see learning curves for guys calling plays. It seems like Bobby Daly's been great. It seems like he's gotten to a rhythm pretty quickly. What do you found his abilities?
Yeah, I think excited about how that's played out so far. Being able to go from one call to the next. I think you talk about players sometimes one play to the next. A play caller has to live in that world every bit as much. You know, I think that our defensive staff right now, there's a tremendous amount of continuity with how that group moved forward. We added Jody Owens. I think, you know, both Bobby and Sean Howe in particular, their experience with this defense over the last 3 years, I think they've grown quite a bit within the framework of it. You know, I think in Bobby's position the last couple years in particular, you know, I'm sure as you're aspiring to be a play caller, you put yourself in those shoes in preparation and game planning. I suppose to some degree on game days. So he was definitely, in my mind, ready for it, and I think he's shown through 3 weeks that was the case, and we need him to continue to do that.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Just one more, the oars on the depth chart with Paul Rudd and Blake Schmidt, and then the backup quarterbacks. Just any
Yeah,
thoughts
I
on
think
those?
first addressing the nose spot, I think we really see those guys as almost co-starters, and whoever goes out there the first play, they're going to play a very equal role, and that's not a knock against Blake. It's more a credit to Paul, honestly. And then at quarterback, I think, what we saw in the second half is, okay, this is the competition that's still going on between Jordan and Chance. And, through last week and into this week, we need to let that, I think, continue to play out, because when that next opportunity presents itself for the second guy to go in, we got to be right about that the best we can. So.